So now that the moment we've all been waiting for, right? So Bruno and Kathleen Soucy, come on up. So just to familiarize everyone, so Bruno and Kathleen, obviously. So the last decade or so, we've been partnered with them in their global work, Rwanda, and now in Latin America, directors for CBM. So their mission is our mission, and that's to embrace a broken world through word and deed. So bless you, and we look forward to hearing. Okay.
Well, it's great to be with you guys, and it kind of sounds funny when somebody else says it's been a decade. But actually, at this time, 10 years ago, we'd been in Rwanda for 2 months about this time of the year. So it's great to be with you. It's a little bit emotional for me to all the things that have happened and where we've been and where you guys have been with us. So it's a joy to be there. And I was glad to hear as well say, this is our mission. Because sometimes we go to churches and they say, Bruno and Kathleen are going to tell us about their mission. And I say, actually, it's not their mission, it's your mission. So CBM is the mission arm of more than 1,000 Baptist churches across the country. So that's just, it is your mission. We're just going to
roll through this.
Yeah.
So I think we have another picture coming up. We need to share our big news, if you haven't already seen it. When we left 10 years ago, we left with a 12-year-old boy that his Sunday school class sent him off with a guitar and their blessing, and he went knowing that we had ruined his hockey career forever. And he wasn't really thrilled with that prospect, but he really blossomed and grew. That's our son, Ben, in the middle, and we came home at the end of August, and Ben and Alyssa were married on September 3rd. And thank you. It's been a real privilege to be parents, and just for those of you who are on this path, it's a really fantastic, and it just keeps getting better all the time. So they're a young couple that are committed to the Lord. And as God would be working his work in their lives, they're praying about going to Rwanda in a year from now. And so we're really thrilled. And you can see the picture. We also have 6 wonderful grandchildren. Those are not Ben and Alyssa's children. And actually, I kept saying to the photographer, just take the picture, because the babies were not thrilled to be there. But they've decided that they're probably going to put that off for a few years. And we have our daughter Carolyn is in St. John, and our daughter Laura in just outside of Ottawa as well. So it's been a wonderful time. We have come, obviously, to speak to churches, but really I just wanted to tell you we really came because Ben was getting married. No, we're really thrilled to be here. And I love the Ephesians verse that was shared about the church is God's way of reaching the world with the message. It's not you and me, it's us as a community. And so that leads into my thinking about what is community, and we've been sharing about that. And this definition by Scott Peck, I really like it. A group of individuals who have learned to communicate honestly with each other, whose relationships go deeper than their masks of composure, who have developed some significant commitment to rejoice together and mourn together, and who love others, who have developed some significant commitment to make others' conditions their own. And you know, that resonates with us, I think, as Christians, and I really do like that definition. But we know that really God is the author of community, and he designed us to not just have that desire and need for God in our lives, but that desire and need to be a part of a community, and that we need that. So the importance of community, this verse in Ephesians 2:19-22 says, "You are no longer foreigners and strangers, but fellow citizens with God's people and also members of his household, built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, with Jesus Christ himself as a chief cornerstone. In him the whole building is joined together and rises to become a holy temple in the Lord. And in him you too are being built together to become a dwelling in which God lives by his Spirit." And that I know there are many other things in there other than just the sense of community, but we're in this together. And so Bruno and I have had the privilege of living in many different types of communities. Certainly, some of them have been life transforming, some of them are life giving, and some of them are not quite on that path. And so as we share a little bit about the work that we've been privileged to be involved in Bolivia and Cuba, El Salvador, and some other countries in Latin America, we hope that you get a sense of how of working out community, what that looks like.
We often talk about integral mission as if we just discovered a new thing. And in fact, if you read James chapter 2 and Matthew 25 and a whole bunch of other places, you get this idea of integral mission. And for us, that's our challenge. And it's not just so much just individual Christians serving their communities, but as individual Christians as part of a church community that touches their communities. And that's our challenge. We use the Micah definition of what is integral mission. So it's, and then you'll see a bit of this as we go through how the work is done in Bolivia, for example. One of our challenges is that we have Christians doing good works, and we have the church doing what the church does, and never the twain shall meet. And that's our challenge, is in fact, when I look after orphans and widows as a Christian, I do that as part of the church. And likewise, the proclamation that happens from the church as a community, that has social implications. And that's our challenge. I like this saying next to them. We think about, when you hear about what did Jesus do? Who did he hang out with? And I suspect he had tea with the Pharisees from time to time. But most of the stories that we read, Jesus has kids with him. He has women of ill repute that he's talking to. He has people who are suffering from various physical things. And he has people on the margins, different things. So if we're going to be the hands and feet of Jesus, that's who I prefer to hang out with. When we talk about Latin America, for us at CBM, that means Bolivia, of course. It's a really old field, but it also means Cuba and El Salvador. We have very interesting connections in those places, and we hope to share a little bit about some of the things that are exciting about that. We also have had or are working on connections in Haiti and Guatemala, Nicaragua, and so there's other possibilities for us, and we are working with that. In Bolivia specifically, that's our oldest mission field in America. We have been in India for 140 years and in Bolivia for 120 years. So in fact, the Baptists of Bolivia came from the Canadians. And that's how at one time all the pastors were Canadians and the seminary teachers were Canadians. And eventually that moved to now the church is very autonomous, and we are there to provide some assistance and some help and different things. We really believe strongly in team and collaboration. We think that's how you leverage the talents and the hearts of people, and how you get things moving in the right direction is when we can use the gifts of all of our people. Our team at this point is a young couple beside us there, Tim and Callie Hutton, that joined us about a year ago. And Callie's actually a youth pastor, but her role there is not as a pastor, but rather both she and Tim follow the programs. We invest about $350,000 a year in Bolivia in various programs, seminary and the church, as well as some other programs that I'll describe shortly, some social, the social gospel, and really in an applied manner. The other couple there is Bill and Janice Dick, and if you've been in the Baptist world for a while, you might remember seeing them in Indonesia in the 2000s, and for the last 5 years, Bill has been a pastor at Calgary, First Baptist in Calgary, and they will be joining us early in the new year, so we're really thrilled about that. Patty, the young woman with the blue jacket, is a Bolivian, but she's on staff with us, and Kathleen and her work together very closely to host teams. We host several teams each year, and it's quite an energy required to do that really well. I should talk about David and Susanna. They have been in Bolivia for the last 5 years, and David's been very deeply involved with a program called Soucy, which is a very comprehensive discipleship kind of programming, and that organization is based in Costa Rica, so we're just sort of recognizing his heart and his desire, and in fact, in a few weeks, they'll be in Costa Rica seconded to that organization. In Bolivia, we actually have two partners per se. We always work through a local church, and our partner in Bolivia is the Union of Baptist Churches of Bolivia. We also are partnered with an organization called OBADIS. So that's the acronym for basically the social arm of the Baptist churches. And for legal reasons, it has to be that way. It's actually illegal when we talk about integral mission. It's illegal for churches in Bolivia to practice integral mission. So it's kind of a strange setup. But through OBADIS, they're able to do that. And like I was saying, those are Christians, most of the members of the Baptist churches, doing good works in the community, but not necessarily as part of the church. And so that's our challenge, and we've been making some progress there to do that. The next slide, just so we do the traditional missionary things. There's the seminary and all the training that happens, training future pastors and training current pastors to do their work more effectively.
So some of the history that we've inherited, it's always been great. You know, when we were in Rwanda, we were sort of at the grassroots level and the beginning of much of the programming. But in Bolivia, with this history, we've come into this, and so as Bruno was mentioning, we have these sort of two pillars that don't necessarily connect. So we've been involved in sort of forcing a little bit more of that connection, and they're church-based integral mission initiatives that we've been supporting, and getting the seminary, the pastors, and also the development people that have that expertise working together, so that and then to encourage the churches to start poking holes in the walls and being out in their community. And how to do that isn't just intuitive. And I know as a church community, you've been involved in this in your own community. You've also done it in a global sense as well. So as a result, we've come alongside churches that are already reaching out, and we've been with some that have shown an interest in doing that. So with some theological training on changing your mindset, many Bolivians, churches do, 80% of the churches, it's the idea of you go out, you do a crusade, you win souls, you bring them back into the church, and you shut the door, and we're all going to be good. So this is sort of the reverse way to do it. So this one ministry that you see up there, Emmanuel Niños con Futuro, is an organization. It's a young woman. It started with a young woman in the church who had a passion for working with the children of prostitutes, and so she lives in the red light district, and the people that operate the prostitution do not allow you to go near the women and bother their business, but they allow her to work with the children. And so her church is involved in this work, and together they are seeing changes in their community because of ministering to these children. We have, we've inherited some interesting history in Bolivia. The Casa de la Amistad, again, for those of you who are familiar with CBM, that is a ministry to children whose parents live in the prison. And so the actual building is right outside the doors of one of the largest men's prison in Cochabamba, where we live. And what happens, kids they live with their parents. The mothers go with the fathers to jail, and so do the children. And as you can imagine, it's not a healthy place to be. So the CASA gives support for school. They have psychologists. They deal with all of the issues that these children who are in vulnerable situations face. And of course, they give a strong spiritual component and nurturing in their lives that we see tremendous impacts. The reason I'm bringing up the CASA is because in this place, it has become institutionalized. You need professionals. They need help. And so CBM has funded that happily. But slowly, the church has stepped back a little bit from this. And so while it is a great ministry, we are facing the challenge of trying to implicate the church again in this work, because it's not sustainable the way it is. In the next slide, there's another project that focuses on targeting children who work. So kids there, if you're 10, 8, 9, 10, you go to work every day, and you're selling candy on the street, you're shining shoes, you're helping your mother at her fruit stall, whatever. And so again, these kids come from very vulnerable backgrounds. And the difference with this project is that it is a ministry of a local church, and the comparison is dramatic. These kids are engaged in the work of the church, whether they end up going to that church or not. Either way, many have become baptized, and their families have been affected by this, and therefore their communities. So we're seeing those types of things. The next project that is a really big one in Bolivia is around the Chagas disease, and without getting into a lot of that, it's a little bug that carries this disease. They bite you, and it doesn't kill you overnight, but it does diminish your productivity. It affects your heart. So oftentimes as adults, while you might live another 20 years with this disease, you might not be able to work and care for your families. So there are a lot of things that come with supporting that project, including repairing homes so this bug can't live in it. The other part that we have found really neat about this project is that you have to have some professionalism around that. There's testing, there's medical professionals involved, but the thing is that the local church is now becoming involved in this. So we have short-term mission teams that come to Bolivia, and we often use them in this project to help build the houses. And then in the next slide, you can see the one thing that's really been exciting to us. In fact, next weekend, the church that we attend in Cochabamba, which is a professional, fairly professional people, it's outside of the seminary in Cochabamba. We have students, educated people, and they have some resources. And this church is going out into the Chagas area, and they're doing their own short-term mission trip, and their focus is, yes, to help repair the houses, but they're also going to build into the leadership of the local church that is desperately needing, how do we do discipleship? How do we grow as a church?
We say we're working in Bolivia, and that's the largest part of our investment, staff and people-wise. We also work in Cuba, and it's a really exciting place. Somehow, when we first went there, I had the impression that a church that's been under communist repression for 50-plus years can't be doing very much, which is absolutely not true. The church in Cuba is dynamic and doing awesome things. We participate with an organization called FEBAC. It's a fraternity of Baptist churches, and it's 43 churches, small organization, but we are an institutional partner. So in other words, we help them decide how should pastors be trained, and where do we do women's discipleship groups, and where's the micro enterprise and microfinance kind of effort going to be. And so that's a really exciting piece. The other part for Cuba, other than one church that we know of, there's been no new construction since 1959. So we have a lot of home churches. And I just have a picture up there, really my favorite. It's actually a garage church, so that's kind of neat. We're in El Salvador as well. It's an exciting place, and some of you may know of El Salvador because it's in the news from time to time. Most of our partnerships are with partners that we'd say are not as strong as us. So in other words, we bring money, we bring education, we bring resources. This organization that we're with in El Salvador, we're actually there because we want to learn from them. They've been doing church-based community development for the last 10 years. The 10 years before that, they were doing community development. And what they came to learn is that in order for it to stick, so in other words, you probably all heard the story about we dig a well, put the pump in, and 6 months later after we leave, the pump breaks and the people don't know what to do. And what they've discovered is that when the church is at the center of the community engagement, the projects stick. So the development that happens stays and continues because they own it, and because the community will have the church in it long after we're gone. So that's really exciting. Next slide, just to indicate a little bit. You've probably heard about the gangs. The El Salvador is run by gangs. If your kids are in public school, they're in a gang. And so that's what that's 18th Street from LA, and that's who controls that part of the street, so they just want you to know who's in charge. And we go into the communities, we feel safe because our pastors have very good connections with the leadership in those communities, so that's what happens. That people standing around praying is just one example of how church-based development really sticks. And that's because they're there. Next slide. We talk about all the good stuff, and there is a lot of good stuff. We also have challenges. I think some of you probably speak a bit of Spanish, and really tourist level Spanish is relatively simple, but to really speak your heart is a challenge, and we're still working on that. We spent 6 months in Costa Rica, and we spent last year mostly 2 hours a week trying to get our handle around this thing, and then it went from there, but we're still continuing, and to really be able to share your heart takes a lot of energy. Lots of different cultures and lots of even different ways of speaking the language, which are which are a challenge. The history has been a real wealth. Pretty well every church we go to in English Canada, there's either a retired Bolivian missionary or a family of in that church, and that's a real wealth. The other side of it is that it's a bit of a challenge for us in Bolivia, because the Bolivians remember what it's like, what Canadians do. And so at times we're trying to move things in a certain direction, and we are told by our Bolivian partner, oh, no, that's not how you do things. We know how Canadians do things, and you're getting off track here. So that's part of the challenge that we're trying to do.
Bruno's often underneath the car, so that we wanted to do that as a challenge. He didn't get thrown there, but he spends time under there every time we go out. I get to talk about the joys, and so certainly working in a team brings us a lot of challenges, but a lot of joy as well. You know, when you're one or two people, you have some limitations in your thinking and in your ability to work, and so as a team we're really thrilled with that, and especially as it grows to include a lot of the Bolivian people. The part of working with the partners has been a real encouragement to us as well, to see how people can be unified, have very different theologies, but come together on what's important. How do we be Jesus in the community? And as I wrap up here, the verse that has been sticking with us this year in Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And we have a lot of things that we can think about, I know, here and wherever you work, that are excellent and praiseworthy. And focusing on those things has given us a lot of encouragement and joy. We want to thank you so much. It just seems so little to say this, but knowing that you are standing, holding the ropes, somebody mentioned that has stuck with them, of holding the ropes, and it sticks with us every day, knowing that you're praying for us, for the significant financial support you give to us, especially as the economic times challenge us as well, where we're living. So God bless you. I'm sorry we've got to run and go to Brentwood, but it's wonderful to be here with you all, and we appreciate and love all of you.
So thank you. We're going to pray. We're going to pray for these folks. So I noticed challenges, language, culture, history. Is there anything else that I can pray for you right now as a family that would bless you?
I think bringing that team together, and we've made a lot of progress. That's been a big part of the challenges of being in that place. Mm-hmm. And we want the team to be, of course, the CBM staff. But when we think back to what we were able to see happen in Rwanda, where the Rwandans continued after we left, because we had built into them, our presence wasn't essential to making the work continue to move. And so that's kind of the next phase of building team, is actually our Bolivian contemporaries and the people managing programs in the seminary and the church denomination being part of us too, so that we can build into their lives, so that we really want to be able to not be there at some point. Like, building dependency is not the right way to do things. So, yeah.
And I just ask that you would continue to pray for our families, because we see so many people, and we're at the stage of life. I know there are many grandparents here, parents of adults, young adults, and we don't take for granted the fact that we have kids that are flourishing and growing and being nurtured where they are, be in their church or their communities. And so we know that covering them in prayer really is a blessing for us, and very freeing, because if there were problems, we would not be where we are. So we appreciate your prayers.
Well, let's pray together. But Father, I thank you for Bruno and Kathleen. I thank you for the calling that you've put on their lives. I thank you, God, that you've put in our hearts as a church family to support them. And right now, God, we want to support them in prayer. We pray, God, that they would continue to be leaders and build leaders and disciples, that the teams that they start would flourish as they move on. And I pray, God, that you would bless their families that are supported through the mission. I pray for Bruno and Kathleen's kids. I pray for those who are involved in the mission field, that you would protect the families. God, that you would know that they have a purpose in their lives, and you would bless them. In Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen.
Thanks,
Thank
Kevin.
Well, off to Brentwood. Okay. Bless you.
Bless you. Thank you very much.
Bless you.
Thank you, guys.